This is Gary by the Chalkboard. My guest today is my friend Miller Talbot, who I've known for a number of years and I value highly. Miller, welcome to By the Chalkboard, brother.
It's good to be here, Gary.
And it is good to talk to you, to see your face. And man, I've had so many fantastic experiences and conversations with you over the years that I'm honored to have another one. And there are so many things that we talked
Yeah,
about.
I'm looking forward to it.
There are so many things we talked about over the years that I thought, man, these things need to be recorded so we can share them with other people and spread that value to them. So we're going to do that today. And let's just open this up and
Sounds good.
share the value of our experiences with especially men in our life, because that's one of the things I'm really passionate about and focused on is helping men who are struggling and going through things like a midlife crisis to help them out of that and show them a new aspect of life where they can thrive and flourish.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So let me start off. I have to tell a story about you and why I have to. This is why you are so important to me. Is this is where it all really started, where you became not just an acquaintance but a friend. And it was in 2007 when I was being threatened uh, to by to lose my job working for a defense contractor because I wouldn't participate in
Yeah.
their diversity training program. And I didn't know what to do. I had talked to a couple other people that I knew to get advice. And I remember the day that I asked you about that. I was telling you and hoping to get something beneficial or a direction or anything in life from somebody. And the best thing you did was not give me advice. You just asked me a question. And it was the most important question that that I had ever been asked during that whole situation. And you asked me, if you go through with what they want you to do, is it going to take a piece of your heart? And immediately I said, yes, it will. And my answer was clear. My path was clear at that moment. And if I had said yes to them and no to me, I wouldn't be sitting here with you on this podcast today, sharing my experiences the way I'm doing it.
Well, Gary, I always believed in you from the first time I met you, and I knew that even though you didn't feel like you had the answers, you really did. And part of the problem that we face as men is we've been told repeatedly that we don't have the answers that we need. And the truth of the matter is that we really do. We know what we need to do. But because of the way our culture and society treat us, we've been given lots of cause to doubt that. And so I think part of what you're up to and what I'm definitely interested in is helping people believe again that we know what we need to do. And it's not that hard. It's really pretty simple. So yeah, I was really proud when you stood up and said, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
It started the most difficult time of my life up to that point because I was 37 and it triggered this midlife crisis. That's just a term for going through a difficult time, but it happens to men around that
Right.
age, late 30s, early 40s, and so many things happened after that. 37, get fired, my metabolism starts changing. I start gaining weight. My athleticism goes down dramatically, or at least I thought it was, and changing jobs. 6 months after that, after I got fired, I had this full-blown anxiety attack and took an ambulance ride to the hospital, and it just was one thing after another. And I felt so stuck for several years that I didn't know what to do. But I kept going. I kept a good attitude, even in all that struggle, even in all the difficulties of sleeping and the stress and the changing of jobs. I just kept pressing forward and I kept searching. In fact, I started searching more diligently and deeper than I ever had in my life during that time. And that's one of the things that brought me to this place now where I am, because of that dedication of just, I'm not giving up.
Right. Right. That's good stuff, Gary. And that's the thing is sometimes, I guess, sometimes it's what society has trained us to believe about our own decisions and decision-making ability. But sometimes it's a fear of the consequences of a decision.
Hmm.
And I guess where I'm going with that is the whole idea that sometimes the consequences of making the right decision are harsh, as you experienced. But there's more to your story than just the difficulties that you went through over the next couple of years after that decision. And that is the freedom that you're experiencing now, the liberty that you have and the confidence you have that, yeah, sometimes it's hard. But the truth is that it's hard no matter what, because it would have destroyed your soul to stay with that and to submit to the ridiculous requests or demands that were being made on you. You'd have kept your job, but you'd have lost part of your soul, if you'd have stayed with that.
That's what compromise does. You compromise once, well, now you're going to compromise the next time and the next time. And I knew I was going to do that. Like, if I compromise this, what happens next time something comes up? Do I have to just roll over again? Do I have to get beaten worse than this? And I just couldn't do it. And I talked to several people that I worked with, including one woman there who said, man, I wish I could do what you're doing, but I just can't afford it. And I remember telling her, and I can't afford not to.
Yeah.
There's something in my life that I can't keep doing this. It's risky, but I'm taking the risk and I'm not complying. You do what you want.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think we're seeing right now, it's really interesting, Gary, because I think we're seeing right now in our nation the result of a whole nation of people reaping the consequences of submission when they should have rebelled. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We have submitted to our two-party system, to the duopoly. We haven't stood up and said, you know what, we're not going to vote for those guys because we can't. Give us someone we can vote for because we're not going to vote against people anymore.
That's good.
We've chosen the lesser of two evils for so long that the institution now believes that evil is what we want. And so we wind up in a situation where, I mean, who can we choose? I mean, neither choice is good. And we have unrest, and people are standing up and saying, we're not going to take this anymore. But almost without exception, they're young people with no experience and no wisdom. And so they're embracing ideologies that are not, they're just as evil as the duopoly that we've been given. So it's time for men like you and me to stand up and say, it's enough of this. We're going to choose something different. We're going to find somebody we can vote for. And it's probably not going to be a Republican, and it's probably not going to be a Democrat, and it's probably not going to be a Libertarian, because you guys are all sold to the institution.
Yeah, the mainstream media has been packaged to tell you what to believe. Here are the choices.
Right.
This one and that one. Instead of bringing an option to expand your life, what they bring you is the option to narrow your life, because that's what it does. I had a fantastic experience with my oldest daughter, my teenage daughter, a couple of weeks ago. We have a wonderful relationship. She shares things with me openly every day, whatever it is. Any drama at school, she'll share it with me. And I love that. Let her spill it out, And so when I pick her up in the morning to take her to school, she shares. Well, she got in my truck one morning, and the first thing she said was, "Dad, I want to drop out of school."
Good.
Yeah. Well, what I told her was, I said, "That's an option." I said, "It's not a good option or a bad option. It's just an option." I said, "But have you broken that option down? And what are your other options? Because you need to look at all your options, write everything down, get a piece of paper and explore all your options." I said, "If one of your options is dropping out of school, write that one down. If your next option is going to the moon, write it down. It doesn't matter if it's ridiculous, crazy, insane, write all your options down, because if you do that and start exploring them, the best options will rise to the surface." That's how you have to live life. If you come to a conclusion and saying, "My only option is dropping out of school," without looking at the other options, man, you've put yourself in a corner. You have blocked yourself in your own life. But if you explore all the options, wow, your life will expand in ways you can't even imagine.
Right. Right. And that's, I think, so important, because you're teaching her how to think. And that is it's an undervalued skill in our culture, is how do you process through what your next move is? And like when you decided not to go through with the diversity training at that job, your options weren't primarily about, well, do I keep my source of income or do I lose my source of income? See, that's what most people would have narrowed that down to. In fact, it's what the lady you spoke of narrowed her options down to. I can keep my income or I can lose my income, and I can't afford to lose my income. But she didn't factor in the other possibilities. Okay, I can keep my integrity and my belief system, or I can throw those under the bus. So what most people forget is they were looking for a job when they found this one. Right? We all know what it's like. We can find work. There's plenty of work out there. People always need something. There's a way to make a living. It may not be the living you want. It may not be the living you like, but living's about way more than just money. We can live in pretty harsh conditions and be happy if we retain our integrity in our soul and our heart. And so I think it's important, like you said, you said, maybe going to the moon's an option. Well, it seems silly, but compared to what? You know, it seems silly to lose your income. That's silly. Who would even consider that as an option? Well, you know, compared to what? Lose your income or lose a big chunk of your heart and soul? I don't know. For me, it's kind of a not. It takes on a much different perspective when you consider all the options, and it's important to learn how to think that way.
And it's important to me to let other people know that I value your freedom to have options, to not break them down because one of the options they're considering is absolutely crazy. To say, okay, it's an option. To not undermine their thought process, to not undermine their uh, their own value as a human being, and in being able to explore this life with freedom
Mm-hmm.
in a positive way. And so that's one of the things I'm really focused on. And you've always been that way. Everyone, especially with me and other people, I've always seen you that way. There's always this deep value for them as a human being. Doesn't mean you don't disagree with them. You and I have disagreed, but I love hearing your thoughts on whatever it is we're talking about, because you
Right.
matter to me. I value you, what your thoughts are, your opinions, your options. Let's go, bring them out, because we have to explore life that way and teach others, hey, you need to explore life this way too. Look at all your options, bring them
Right.
out, explore, and expand your life.
Right. Well, you know, there's some options that you don't want to you don't want to see people consider too seriously. You know, I have a dear friend of mine who last year decided to end his life, and you know, to me, that's not a viable option for anybody.
Right.
But some people choose it, and it's so final. And I think there are other things, you know, particularly with young people, you you kind of want to help them go through a process and maybe guide them through the selections and help them think about, okay, what are the potential consequences here? And if you choose to experiment with those consequences, go for it. I mean, that's how you learn. Falling down is very valuable to us. It teaches us. But I don't want to limit your ability to learn from your mistakes. I don't want to limit my children's ability to learn from their mistakes. You know, yesterday, my oldest daughter, Sarah, she just got her driver's license. And she's experiencing freedom at a level that is both new and uncomfortable for her mom and I. And last night, she tells us she's going to go take some pictures. She's a photographer. She's really into photography. And she's going to go take some pictures of the fire, the forest fire that's burning out here south of town. So our understanding that she's going to drive 5 or 6 miles down there and get in a good place and take some pictures. Well, she's gone for a long time. And finally, I pull her up on Find My Phone, and she is miles away in the back country in the sticks by herself with another 16-year-old, 15-year-old girl. And I mean, they're in 4-wheel drive country. And so fortunately, she was where I could get a cell signal, which was pretty amazing because that's not the case in many situations. And I called her and I said, you need to get your butt home. And so she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she came home. And it was good that it took her a long time to get here because it gave me time to cool off. Because I was pretty upset with her right at first. But when she got home, we started talking about things that she should have considered, possible consequences that she should have considered before she took that answer. I mean, that action. And she didn't consider any of those consequences. So, we sat down and I'm like, okay, what happens? You get down there on those back roads, and you get a flat where there's no cell service. What are you gonna do? You're in the path of a fire. And the last guy to change that tire put the lug nuts on too tight. Can you and your little 15-year-old friend, who between the two of you might go 120, 130, what are you going to do? You're going to be able to get those lug nuts off? You're going to be able to get the jack under it and get it jacked up and get the tire changed? And I've taught her how to do all that stuff, but can you do it under duress? What are you going to do? And so, it was an opportunity for her to think about, okay, was the risk worth taking? An older, wiser Sarah may have said, absolutely, the risk was worth it. But at least she had considered the consequences.
Mm.
And as a young 15-year-old girl with brand new freedom, she hadn't considered the potential consequences of her decision. So if I'd had a chance to talk to her before she left, we would have discussed that. If she'd have said, yeah, Dad, we want to go down here, then I would have been able to say, okay, let's think about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably would have said, I'd rather you didn't do that. But with an older person, with her, I don't think she would have chosen to do that if she had considered all the possible outcomes. I think she would have said, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. But anyway, I'm rambling now.
That's one of my greatest joys as a parent, when I can do that, especially with my older daughter, who is very, very strong-willed. And she will consider what I'm saying and make a different decision. I love when that happens, because it doesn't always happen. Sometimes she's very adamant that whatever she came up with, that's what needs to happen. But the older she gets, the more mature she gets, she does that so much more often than she used to, where we have an open conversation about it. And we do exactly what you were talking about, is saying, well, let's break this down a little bit. Have you considered this? Oh, no, I didn't think about that at all. She has learned that so well that she will do that with me. She turns it, not turns it back on me. She just kind of naturally does that with me, with things in my life, because, I'm podcasting now. This is something I just started. I'm learning the connectivity. I'm learning different media platforms. She knows this stuff as if she's the one that made it.
Right.
She knows how to connect and do all these things that Dad doesn't know how to do. And so there's been several times she's suggested things to me that expanded my aspect of life, because I could consider other things. And I love having a father-daughter relationship where that goes both ways. Very proud of that.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Well, tell me, what's kind of, see, I've got to struggle with my own tendency to take control of the conversation.
No,
I was going to ask you, what's got your attention these days?
This podcast is about you, Miller. You're my guest. I am highlighting you and the value of you and your experiences in life here. So anything you want to share, whatever it is, this is your platform, because I want you to have most of the microphone. So I'm going to ask you the same question. I'll answer it briefly, but then I'm going to I want you to,
Okay.
what's valuable in your life right now, and what are you enjoying doing? I'm enjoying doing this podcast, and I'm exploring photography. I got laid off 6 weeks ago, so I have time to work on this. That's what I'm doing. I don't have a job, but I'm enjoying this time and I'm taking
Was it
advantage of it. And I'm
yeah,
every day working
yeah,
on something new, talking to people, just expanding an experience in life that I've never done before, and enjoying these conversations, which, you know, me back in 2007, 12, 15 years ago, I was a real shy, quiet person. I wouldn't have ever done this. Now I
yeah,
enjoy these
right,
conversations and I seek them out. So that's what is exciting in my life right now. So what about yours?
right.
What is fun and enjoyable in your life right now?
Well, it's hard to think of it in terms of what's fun and enjoyable. I guess the fun that I've been having just in the last couple of weeks is hunting. Hunting season has started, and that's something I enjoy a lot. And so I've been able to do that some with my daughters. You get licenses for public land hunting out here by a lottery, and my daughters both drew elk licenses this year, and I drew an elk license. And so their hunt was 5 days, and then mine was 5 days, and then their deer hunt, they also drew deer licenses, and so their deer hunt starts on Saturday. So the hunting for the last couple of weeks has had my attention. But really, the thing that's got my attention right now the most is, what is it that as a nation we're so divided over?
Mm,
Um, and I've been thinking in terms of, that everybody talks about, well, it's between the right and the left. And I think that's true to a point. But I think it's also between the top and the bottom. And most people would say, well, what's the top and the bottom? And the top is authoritarianism, and the bottom is libertarianism. Not big L libertarianism like the party, but little L libertarianism like freedom. And it feels like the extreme right and the extreme left have moved to the top of the scale and become pretty authoritarian. And the people on the left are saying, well, if we could just make the people on the right do what we want them to, then everything would be easier. And people on the right are saying, well, if we could just make the people on the left do what we want them to, then everything would be easier. And so it feels like everything is drifting up toward this authoritarianism that is actually the opposite of what this country was founded on. And it's causing a lot of stress. It's causing people to start talking about, are we going to have a civil war? It's causing a lot of fear. And I've just been thinking a lot about, where do you want to lie? If you plot those two axes, the vertical axes and the horizontal axis on a graph, they're going to cross somewhere. And where do we want to find ourselves? Well, I think where I want to find myself is right in the middle, right where they cross. That would be ideal. I don't think I'll get there, but I think that would be ideal. And so what are the right and the left? I've been thinking about that a lot. What's the real difference between the right and the left? And I think when it comes down to it, people on the left value highly communal responsibility. It's often talked about in terms of compassion. We have a communal responsibility to take care of people. And I think the right, if you go all the way out to the end of the line on the right, you find people saying, well, it's about individual responsibility. And I have an obligation to care for myself. And on the extreme right, I'm not obliged to care for anyone else but myself. And on the extreme left, you have people who are like, we sacrifice our individual rights because we have an obligation to take care of everyone. And so, I want to find myself in the middle, because I do believe that we do have an obligation to take care of people who can't take care of themselves, a communal obligation to take care of people who can't care for themselves. But I also believe that we have an obligation to enrich our own life, to be the best person that we can be, and to take care of ourselves. So that's kind of what's had my attention lately, and it just feels like the further left the left goes, the further right the right goes. It's like almost like a law of physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So the further out from the middle one side goes, the further out from the middle the other side goes. And I think the further up from the middle one side goes, the further down from the middle the other side goes. And we know that if you get too high on that vertical axis, then you wind up with Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot. But if you wind up too far down on the vertical axis towards liberty, you wind up with total chaos and anarchy. And somewhere in the middle is where we want to be. So I've just been thinking about that a lot. And if it's true that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, what if we all started moving towards the middle instead of the extremes? Would it then also cause the other side to come towards the middle? I don't know. But that's been my thought process. And I tend to think that most people would move towards the middle if they saw the other side coming. I think that's where the handshake comes in. When you see somebody that you may disagree, but they extend their hand, most people accept it. They take the hand. But there are outliers that seem to have more attention, to get more attention. And they display something altogether different. I think we need to stop paying attention to those people. So that's been at the forefront of my thought process lately.
Now that was rich. That was really rich. There's a constant awareness in my life, more and more, of examining my own heart, examining my own thoughts when I'm making a decision or considering some sort of action, because I can be very selfish. I can go to that extreme for myself, that I want this just for myself, without considering for a moment, now this is also a communal existence here on this planet. And doing so always brings me back to what you've described as the middle. I have to take care of this life, and I have to take the time to do that, by myself, but I also want to be available to other life that is here and benefit other life. But I can't do that by infringing upon their freedom to search out and grow their own life by
Yeah.
taking things from them or oppressing them in some way or using them, because that then goes, like you said, off to that far left side where now it's about control and power rather
Mhm.
than meeting in that place in the middle where, man, you have to have some rules in place because that's how this earth operates. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you want everyone to have the opportunity to search out the possibilities that are beneficial for them.
Right.
And it seems like more and more our government is pushing, or how do I put it? Not just the government, but the government and the media and social media platforms are, they're censoring people who are talking about those things, who are promoting those things, who are believing those things, and
Mhm.
giving them the narrative of what they should be believing.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. We've seen recently the effects of too much liberty and the effects of too much authority. And, you know, just think for a minute about the riots in some of these bigger cities, Chicago and Seattle and Portland, where these people have taken the liberty to quote unquote protest and riot and destroy property. That's liberty gone too far. It's liberty that has descended into chaos. And what it has done is it has cost people and many people, their livelihoods, and some people their lives. And businesses have been burned, stores have been destroyed. You know, the whole thing. On the other hand, we've seen the effects of too much authority with the COVID shutdowns. The government stepping in and said, you will not open your business. Well, those businesses had bills. They had financial obligations that they needed to be in business in order to meet. And so we've seen people going out of business and losing their livelihoods. And some people actually not knowing how to deal with that, taking their own lives. And so it's the authoritarianism has destroyed livelihoods and lives, just like the libertarianism on the other extreme has done the same thing. And so my hope is that people will see, okay, wait a minute. We need to move towards the middle. Too much of either is really not good. I think, I mean, you and I both come from the same sort of background. I think it's what Jesus was trying to communicate to us. It's that we need both. We need a healthy dose of both. We need that individual responsibility, and we need to embrace the idea of communal responsibility, that as a community, we take care of one another. But as an individual, I take care of myself, and there's a balance there. And we need to submit to a higher authority, his Father. But we also need to choose for ourselves to do that, which is the liberty end of it. And so I just think I think it's something that's got to come up from the grassroots, because it's not going to come from the top down. It's not going to come from our leadership, whichever leaders we choose. It's not going to come from them. We have to choose this as individuals. And it's one of the things, I believe it was Solzhenitsyn said about while he was in the gulags, that he was responsible for that situation where so many people were imprisoned because he didn't speak the truth. And if free men and women don't stand up and say, you know what, that what you're telling me is not true, and say what's true is we need all of it and we need to meet in the middle, then we'll be personally responsible for the downfall of our society.
You got me speechless there. I'm just that was so rich that I just want to sit and dwell on it.
Well, that's what
Really?
I've been doing for a long time. For a couple of weeks now, I've been just really mulling this over and thinking about it.
No, I think you put that in really clear terms. It sure helped me look at things in a clearer way, realizing, yeah, even in my own life, every little aspect can get too far one direction or another, backing off from things. That's the only way this balance will come. It's the only way.
Yeah.
It works that way with the simplest things. Any
Right.
abundance that you have, if someone has a lack of it and you share, it's gone from too much over here to not enough over here. And now there's balance. It can be something as simple as having a grapevine. You have grapes, someone doesn't. It can be something really profound, like, sharing wisdom or patience or friendship with someone who has a lack. You have an abundance of friendship. Someone has a lack. You share that. There's a balance now between you and them. You've come together.
Well, if I don't exercise my individual responsibility to care for that vine, I won't have any grapes to share. So both needed. To exercise share my grapes. I don't want to have my grapes taken. The opportunity to exercise my liberty to share those grapes. And the fact of the matter is when I do that, I'm personally enriched, but so is the community. And why do I do that? Because I do believe that there is a higher authority that says this is what's right. This is how human society thrives. And so I choose to submit myself to that authority.
And to me, there's evidence to back that up. If you practice that in your life, you're going to see the effect of it, and you'll see the positive way it works with you and with your community. If you just say, well, that's not going to work, I'm not even going to try it. Well, now you've completely closed off any opportunity to learn. But I know from my experience that what you said, if you put those things into practice, you're going to see something remarkable happen in your life and in the lives of those around you, because it does work that way. It does benefit you as an individual.
Right.
And whatever value you add to your own personal life, now you become more valuable in this world to others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love there's a saying that's, with the measure you use, it will be measured to you.
Mm.
And the whole idea of moving towards the middle, it's so closely aligned with the whole idea of karma and reciprocity, however you want to look at it. It's the same sort of thing. And as you extend your hand in generosity, human nature is to reciprocate. And we see it all around us. These voices that we have in our culture, like social media and the news, the quote unquote news, are telling a different story. But the true story is that we're designed for community. We're designed for love and generosity. There are, like I said, outliers. And I don't want to be too Pollyanna, because I do believe that there are bad actors. And the sad truth of that is that the bad actors tend to have the loudest voice. They're the ones we hear. So it's, goodness requires intentionality. Evil, which is the absence of goodness, happens all by itself. It just happens. So it's incumbent upon people to express that goodness with intentionality. I know there's lots of people that walk around every day and they're like, well, I don't have anything I can give to. You know, I don't, it's like, well, you have to look for those opportunities. You have to be intentional about it. Who can you help? Who needs your help? I guarantee there are people in our communities who need our help, but they're suffering quietly. So you can look around and go, well, I don't see anybody that needs any help. Well, have you looked? Have you investigated? Have you extended your hand and entered into relationships with people intentionally? It requires intentionality, because we're all suffering at some level, at some point in our life. We all need help at some level, at some point in our life. I know we've all experienced those moments when we need help, but for one reason or another, we don't ask for it. We hide that need. And so we understand that that's how things work. And if we do understand that, then why wouldn't we seek opportunities to lend a hand? And that's, you know, sometimes the furthest you can extend your hand is your own family. That's another thing I want to say, is it doesn't have to be grandiose. You know, it can be simple. It can be small. Even the small things count.
Yes.
And I think they have a disproportionate effect on the world. It may not require a lot of energy, but the energy that's released from those moments is far greater than the energy that's put into it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We tend to try to quantify everything as a size or a shape, you know, or a weight, but and then doing something for someone. Well, yeah, we went over and built, um, put on a new roof and built a whole fence for those neighbors. And you're thinking, oh, I went over and straightened their mailbox because it was leaning. There's no difference in what you did and what they did.
Mhm.
All right. Just because you see that as costing more money and more time doesn't mean that what you did has less value. Because
Right.
anytime you extend your hand to another, there's great value in there. And you don't know what's going to
Mhm.
happen. The smallest thing can grow into the biggest thing.
Right.
And you may never even see it or be aware of it, but it happens that way. Some of the smallest gestures in my life that people have brought to me, valuing me in a moment where I needed it, they may not even remember it. I've told people things they've done for me,
Mhm.
and they didn't remember doing it. But at the time, that little act was so important to me that it stayed with me this long, even things when I was a child. So the
Yeah.
best thing I can do is to go into situations with no expectations of what's going to happen, not evaluating it, not judging anything, just expressing my life from my heart because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have to know what's going to happen, but I know
Mhm.
if I value my life and I value the lives of others, good things happen, that good things result
Right.
from that.
Yeah. It's true. And the investment, there's always a return on the investment. So, if I take that individual responsibility thing very seriously, where I'm responsible to care for myself, to improve my own condition, there may not be anything greater that I can do than to care for others. Um, how many people who really work hard to enrich themselves on their deathbed wish that they'd made another dollar? Um, I think most people wish that they had enriched their relationships, spent more time with other people. Um, I don't think they go to their, I don't think they cross over wishing that they had more money or more things, bigger houses. Um, I think if there are regrets at the end of our lives, they're regrets that have to do with interpersonal relationships. I wish I'd spent more time with people I love. Um, or I wish I had done things um, that were enriching rather than that were spiritually and mentally and emotionally enriching rather than physically enriching. I don't know. I'm just kind of riffing right now, but that's one of the things that's true. Sometimes I don't even believe the things I I don't even believe the things that I'm saying because that's another thing that's real important, Gary, is we have to we have to think out loud sometimes. Um, I'm not sure we can really believe something that we can't articulate. And so it's important to articulate things to discover what we believe about things. And that's the value of conversations like this is it's a journey that we
Yes.
both go on uh, for our own benefit, as well as the benefit of anyone that might be listening to this conversation. So
That's why having conversations with people like you is so valuable because you can explore anything. Anything we talk about, we can expand upon it. We can disagree. We can look at it closer. We can rip it apart if that's what's needed. But we value each other over anything that we're talking about. It's not about what I believe and now my
Right.
value is different, or what you say and now your value is different to me. Our value with each other continues to grow. And so many people in the world need someone to sit down with that just values them as a human being and lets them talk about what they want to talk about. Because when you start to do that, you allow a person to be free, maybe in a way that they haven't been in a long time or ever, possibly since they were a kid. Children are free to do that. They do it
Yeah.
naturally. Most of them are. At some point,
Yeah.
trauma happens, and I can look at my life and that happened, where I close in, they close in, and need people in their life to say, hey, I value you. Whatever you say, your opinions, your thoughts, explore it, open it up. I'm still going to value you as life. And those kind of conversations are necessary.
Well, it's really interesting too, because there's a lot of people who are absolutely high on the authoritarian scale when it comes to their own personal beliefs and opinions. And they tend to demand that you agree with them.
Right.
They're not capable of giving you the liberty to believe what you have come to believe through experimentation and experience and thinking. And maybe you arrived at those conclusions in ways that are not very helpful. But how do you learn better? Well, not by me telling you, because like I said, I don't even agree with myself sometimes. So if maybe you don't have somebody, maybe there's people out there that don't have that person in their life that can let them explore for themselves in a conversation. Maybe the only people they have to talk to are these authoritarian types that demand your agreement. So how do you find that person that can give you the freedom to believe what you want to believe? Well, I think it starts with becoming that person that gives others the freedom to believe what they want to believe. Because again, I think it comes back to that. If I extend my hand in generosity to you, the likelihood that you will extend your hand back to me is increased. So maybe you're not giving me the liberty that I desire to explore and to learn. It might be that the quickest way to get you to give me that is to extend it to you.
What a novel idea. It's so simple, isn't it?
Well, it can be. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes you just have toxic people in your life that you need to say bye to.
Well, it's what I mean by that is they don't see the simplicity of it, that this is simple as just coming together a little closer on something. It's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
If you refuse to accept that or look at it, that's on them. And, sometimes they just have to go because this is their aspect of life. And hey, however you're going to learn, this is where you're going, then you have to go. But you and I can't walk together. That's okay.
Yeah. 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 There's a lot of people that we can't travel with, for different reasons. But you're more likely to find good traveling partners if you become one.
In fact, I think that's the only way you're going to find good traveling
otherwise.
companions is if you are that.
Yeah.
That's been said 1,000 different ways
Mhm.
over millenniums. You must become what you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
You'll never find an end to the way to say that. You can say it over and over again, but that's true.
Yeah.
You must become this. You must become life and love and aware of it here. That's why Jesus said about himself, I am the light of the world. And he looked at all these people and said the exact same thing. You are the light of the world. He could say that about himself because he was
Yeah.
aware of it. And because he was aware of
Mhm.
it, he could spread that to those who were not aware of it. Hey, you are also this. And if you start
Yeah.
looking, you will become aware of it. Your life will be enriched, and you can enrich other lives in a way that you've seen me do.
Yeah. Well, all of the wisdom literature uh, across the world from every culture says the same thing in terms of, you know, be who you want others to be, treat people like you want to be treated. It's a really, in fact, that's to me, that is the definition of love. Um, if I love you, then I treat you like I wish to be treated.
Hmm.
And the cool thing about that is it doesn't require that I like you. You know,
That's true.
I can love you just in the most profound way by just treating you like with respect and doing for you what you need, because that's what I want from you. And you may not return that, but that's on you. It's not on me.
Right. Right. Wow. I was about to get into something else, but we've been on here an hour, and it would probably take another hour to unwrap it. But
Okay, well, maybe someday we'll get a chance to do it again.
yeah. I'm not even going to say it because it's going to get me going. And it'll probably get you going. We'll have
Yeah.
episode 2, brother. But you're going to have to be on here again because
Okay.
you're extending your wisdom to me and to anyone who's going to be listening to this is very valuable.
Well, it would be my pleasure and my honor to do so.
Millet, you're a great friend, and man, I value you very highly. Thank you for coming on here and talking to me and
Well, it's my pleasure.
sharing your heart.
Thanks for having me.
Blessings on you and your family, and we keep up enough that I'll be enjoying your photography and taking pictures in the fall there, and we will get back with you soon.
Thanks, Gary.
All right.
Take care.
Gary. This is Gary by the Chalkboard. Thank you for listening in.